Right. Hi, welcome to our first Facebook Live broadcast on English in Early Childhood, Language Learning and Development MOOC. We're really excited to be with you all today. And I'm Shona Gilmore, lead educator, and I'm joined by course educators, Tracy Chapelton. Hi, Tracy. And
Hi.
we've also got Rhonda Pritchard joining us at some time, but we're having a little bit of technical issues with her, but she'll join us when she can. We'll do our best to answer your questions, but don't worry if we don't get round to all of them. We'll post links and answers to questions we don't get round to answering. So we've got some interesting questions, and let's go to the first one. So what's the best age to start second language for a child? And this comes from Hanin Ali and Carla Med. So Tracy, what advice would you give them?
I think, well, to be honest, I think for me, the earlier the better. And it again, I guess it depends on your circumstances, but there is a window of opportunity, isn't there, between what's the best sort of this critical time when your ears are open to the sounds of a new language and where you don't question things. Children learn in a very natural way, and so they're not worried about making mistakes. They don't know, they're just reacting to what's around them, and another language is just different sounds to them. They're, you know, so, and if they understand the meaning and what, you know, if they understand the interaction and when somebody says that to me, that means this, and you know, I can just play with the sounds. They might, you know, I think the earlier that they're exposed to the language, the better, to be honest. And I think it's about communication and making connections, and if you can do that in another language, then I think that's great.
Yeah, so, and I think that it's really important that that everybody has a different context, don't they? And so there's so many factors that can influence, and I think that it has to be a personal choice, because we don't know how many languages that child's being exposed to. One of the things that's quite obvious in the MOOC is that we live in a global world, and you see so many parents that you know, you have children that have parents from different countries, but then they're not living in their home countries as well. So, oh, we have Rhonda. Hi, Rhonda.
Hello. I can't see anything yet, but I can hear you. So
okay,
please
great.
Carry on.
So, you know, there are a lot of children, from what we're seeing, that are being exposed to about, you know, 5 languages, because each parent has their own language, and then they're living in a third country as well. So it's really it's complex, isn't it?
Yeah. No, Rhonda, we're just talking about what's the best age to learn a second or other language, and we were saying the earlier the better, but it depends on the context. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that note.
No. I think I'm not sure what you said. So.
I also think as well, sometimes, like you said, Shona, it's a very personal decision, and I think if you have a strong sort of, it shouldn't be at the expense of the home language. I think that would be our message as well. You know, it's to enhance communication and growth and development, and not take a piece of that rich other language. But there's absolutely no reason why they can't do all of that at the same time. Children are amazing.
Yeah, they are, and that's something you've touched very much so on one of the conversations going on at the moment on the MOOC, and that is about valuing the home language. And I think that when we talk about the home language, we talk about basically not forcing the child to speak English, which we do talk about in more detail this week in the MOOC. And it's just, you know, there are a lot of settings and a lot of contexts, and, you know, where sometimes they don't have the children a common home language, and it's just knowing that each one is respected because it's part of their identity. But I think we can move on to another question. So I think Neil's putting it up now. Does this one parent, one language approach really work? And will she become really bilingual? Rhonda, what do you think about this one parent, one language approach?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that, quite honestly. Maybe Tracy can say something.
Well, I mean, I don't know either. I think, again, we come back to, I'm not surprised that you would have difficulty answering that, because it's a difficult question and it really does depend on the circumstances. I know that in my own house, we've chosen to do it a certain way because one of us speaks one language and the other person speaks the other language, but we both speak both languages, so nobody's excluded. And I think, if you've got two people in the household and one doesn't speak the language, then they might feel excluded from that. So it's really, I think it totally depends on your personal circumstances. But for me, the one parent, one person language approach has really worked, and that's an anecdotal experience from my own household. But there's lots of, we can put up some links to some articles for further information about that, because I think it's important to know. I think with the one parent, one language approach, that helps children create habits. So they get used to talking to one parent in one language rather than switching all the time. And that you can use that as one teacher, one language as well, because children get used to speaking to their teacher, their English teacher, always in English. It just becomes a habit for them, and those habits are hard to break. So I guess it's important to consider that when you're starting out to make those decisions. Shona, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that children are they're not silly, and they know, for example, when it's, they know when they have to speak in a certain language with Granny, for example, because Granny doesn't speak the other language. It's intuitive. And I'd just like to say we've got participants joining us from Egypt, Japan, Algeria, Hungary, Poland, Russia, Vietnam, India, and Indonesia. So it's really exciting that everyone's joining us. And keep those questions coming in. We've got, I think, time now for another question. And I think that it's Judith Keys. People tell me that my son will be confused because we speak to him in two languages. She was saying she's basically commenting on what we've just been talking about. So, I mean, there's a hot debate about this and children getting confused. In my experience, I think that children naturally will mix languages, they'll do code switching, but I think it all sorts itself out in the end. And I think that that's obvious as well from the discussions that are going on in the MOOC, that there's a lot of participants who've got older children and have seen how the progression has gone. So I think that if there is a little bit of confusion at the beginning, that's normal and natural. So anything to add, Tracy or Rhonda?
I was just thinking about, with the confusion, sometimes we look at it with adult lens and we're confused because we can't imagine how that could be, but children are amazing. And I think in my personal experience, both teaching and as a parent, the children don't get confused. And like you said, Shona, the code switching is actually a normal part of language development. They're sort of, sometimes they'll say the word that's shorter of the two language because they're being efficient. So they're actually being very smart about their choice of words. It's like, oh, if I say that word, I'll get what I want faster. So that might be why they're code switching, not because they're confused.
Yeah. So, I do it actually. There are some words in Spanish that I think say exactly what I want to say more efficiently, and vice versa with English. Okay, so I think we can move on to another question. Oh, we've got another comment come in, and it's I'm a bit worried about that. If I pronounce incorrectly when we speak English with my son, is it a problem to help him in learning English? Yeah, we often get questions about pronunciation, and yeah, I think that we often say this on the MOOC and on our Facebook Live broadcasts, that, you know, everyone has accents.
Yeah.
And yeah, Tracy, anything you'd like to add?
Well, no, I mean, I think first of all, the message you're sending to your child speaking in English to them is that you're willing to have a go, even if your English isn't perfect. And I think that's a much stronger message in terms of their long-term learning. It's good to have good role models of spoken English, good models of spoken English. So if you're worried about your mistakes, make use of all the things that are out there on the internet for learning English. We've got a great series on YouTube with Learning Time with Timmy, which is lots of authentic language going on there to help your child learn English. But I think, yeah, it's that finding that balance between showing your child that you're willing to take risks and have a go. I mean, I know lots of parents of my own students who, you know, their children learn English better because they can see that their parents are willing to have a go. And you can actually see the benefits of that because they realise that, my parents aren't afraid to make mistakes. They'll ask for things on holidays and they don't worry about looking silly. So I can do that too. So that's a really strong message, I think. But we do get that question a lot, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And it's great advice. And, you know, I think that these days we have so much more resources available to us to be able to be exposed to good input. So, and okay, so I think we've got another question coming in, and I think it's quite a long question. Just waiting for that. I understand British Council have developed many apps with animators Aardman. Can my granddaughter use such kind of apps through TV or iPad? Based on my knowledge of those electronic gadgets, including TV screen, will hurt their eyes as it operated towards those babies with the age before 24 months. By the way, I'm from Taiwan, so it's from Lawrence. Okay. Yeah, we've got the Learning Time with Timmy apps, and we obviously think they're great. But I think, you know, there is a lot of debate going on around technology, and especially in the early years with very young children. And so I think, you know, we do have to be careful about screen time. But for us, it's another tool, and it's just the same as any other shared learning experience. It's having the adult doing the activity with the child. It's the same with the YouTube channel that you've just mentioned, Tracy, Learning Time with Timmy. It's a shared experience. And again, it links to learning English together as well. So I think it's just the same as when you read a bedtime story. You know, it can be a part of a routine, but it's a limited time and it's together. So anything, Tracy, have you got anything that I haven't mentioned?
No, not really. I think if you're sharing the experience as well, you can see how they're reacting, like, to the app as well. If they're getting agitated by it, or they're not actually, you know, really young children, babies, they probably won't even understand what it's for. So, you know, it's what are they getting out of it? Is it exposing them to authentic English, and they're enjoying it, and you're enjoying it together, and you can see that they're slowly building up some knowledge, or are they just sort of getting wowed by the lights and noises? I think, you know, if you're doing it together, then you can gauge how long they've had, and is it time to move on as well. So I think it's another opportunity to spend time together. I definitely wouldn't be leaving them alone, you know, with those gadgets and things. And so in the sense of hurting their eyes, like you said, Shona, they're designed to be done in short bursts. So, you know, that would be, I think that, you know, that's okay, and under parental supervision. I don't think, you know, you're not having an extended time in front of the screen, so it'd be like any other sort of environmental screen that there is. Definitely short.
Okay, so before our next question, we've got some more countries have joined us. So we want to say hello to Bangladesh, Italy, Canada, Pakistan, Iran, Malaysia, Taiwan, Nepal, Kurdistan, and Thailand. So hello, everybody. And I think we're going to get another question now. And so since English is a foreign language in Indonesia, in what age should a child learn about tenses and grammar? So yes, we get a lot of questions like that, don't we, Great Tracy? And we in the MOOC, we do talk about, you know, the approach to early years has to be different to older children. And it's, I think, really for me, it's all about attention spans and intrinsic motivation.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be learning about tenses and grammar, but not in an explicit way. This is the thing. So if you're exposing them to natural language, the language is actually much more sophisticated than if we control it and give them doses of tenses and grammar. So it depends on how you look at it, doesn't it? I think talking about tenses and talking about grammar using that meta language, they're not cognitively ready for that until, you know, until they're much older.
We're really mirroring first language, aren't we?
Exactly. And is it going to help them? Do they understand what's, you know, I think like you were saying, Shona, just that sort of play-based kind of learning brings out all of that language anyway. So it's about exposing them to it. They won't realize that they're talking in the past tense, but it'll make sense to them, you know, because they're using it in a context and because it's meaningful to them. So I think it's important for the educators to be aware of that sophisticated language that they're exposing the children to, but the children don't need to know the word for that.
No, it's like saying, you know, do we pre-teach grammar and vocabulary to a child before reading them, even in their home language, a bedtime story? We don't, and they still understand it. So we mirror first language acquisition, really.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we can move on to another question. And Nesma's is, we speak our language Arabic and my daughter has 5 years just starting learning English. We should support her by talking English and learn it. So if I understand right, I mean, I think she's talking about like exposure at home, outside of the formal classroom. So I would just say, yes, absolutely. Talk to her as much as possible. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Tracy.
Definitely. It goes back to what we were saying before, and I think it does show, you rightly, Nesma rightly uses the word, should we support her by talking English and learning it? And you are supporting your child by doing that. By learning another language along with them, you're showing them that you've always got something to learn, something new to learn as well, and it can be a shared learning experience. I think anything that you can do together is great, and that will show your child that you're really interested, without taking over the whole activity, but you know that you're really interested in what they're doing, and that you're not sending them off to do it when you wouldn't do it yourself. So
it's like modeling behaviors. It's like children, you know, we've been talking this week about how children imitate behavior, and so you know it's modeling behavior. So it's a little bit like if a child sees you reading a book, then that you're on the road to having children that love books and reading. But if they never see their parents reading, then it's going to be very difficult to make them passionate about reading. It's the same thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think we often underestimate that potential for like modeling behavior to our children.
Okay, I think we've got another long question coming in, and we are an Arabic family living in Germany where my kids are highly exposed to German. I believe English is really important and I want him to start learning English as early as possible. What do you think about exposing a 3-year-old kid to 3 languages at the same time? So yes, I mean, this is so typical, isn't it? I mean, one thing that fascinates me about the MOOC audience is how global we really are, and how many languages some children are exposed to, like I said at the beginning. So yes, I mean, we get children, participants who have got children, and very young children, sometimes exposed to as many as 5 languages between different home languages, like I said at the beginning, living in a third country. So do they get confused? Is it too much? I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, we all know that children can take a little bit longer, and they all need time to process language. So you know, I think we talked this week about the silent period, don't we, Tracy, about how that can come into a play in these sort of situations. And that's why I think parents sometimes have reservations.
Yeah. No, I think again, it depends on the child, doesn't it, and how they react. And if they're not fazed by it or really enjoying it, then why not? You know, I think yeah, as long as they don't feel pressure to learn that language, I think they'll, you know, or even if they see it used in meaningful ways, they'll soon catch on that if they want to do certain things, then they use this language. If they want to do other things, they need to use that language, or they associate it with the context, don't they? They'll like, well, at school we use German, in playgroup we use English, and at home we use Arabic. So they kind of get used to it, I think. Again, I go back to that thing about children are amazing. They just get so much in their stride that we take it for granted how much they can do.
Yeah, and I think it makes, you know, I think it's what we talk about in This Week in the MOOC around the sounds and pronunciation, and how children have a window of opportunity, and why wouldn't we take advantage of that? They might not grow up to speak all those languages to the same proficiency, but we all know that when you learn one language, you always have much more of an advantage because of transferable skills in another. So it's going to set them up well for life, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting a lot of comments and more questions, so we'll move on. What is a good time frame for teaching English to a 6-year-old? 50, 20 minutes, half an hour or more? So I think, Tracy, this goes back to what we talk about when we talk about attention spans and intrinsic motivation, doesn't it?
Yeah. It depends what you mean by teaching English too. If it's like you're teaching them a particular skill, like singing a song or reading a story, definitely not very long. You know, they can only focus for a very short period of time. Even 15 minutes sounds a bit long. But if you're just naturally interacting with them in the language, like playing with them or doing an activity together, like walking around the park and pointing out things in the park, and you know, doing cooking together or something, then that can go on forever, as long as the child's interested. So it really depends on what you want to achieve, I think. So
and it's like you say, it's following their interests. And so know that children can carry on for a very long time if they're engaged and motivated. So yes, I would say definitely. I think we're going to have some comments now. So we've got, oops, it disappeared. My 2-year-old daughter sings Baby Shark, Do, 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 and other nursery rhymes. I think nursery rhymes on YouTube is a good source to learn English. She's also a big fan of Timmy. I'm from Afghanistan. That's great news. We're big fans as well of learning time with Timmy on YouTube. The parents I know have positive results letting them do the naughty things, tablet, TV, in the second language, and then their first language for family interaction. So that's from Dale. And we've also got a question comment from Maggie from Taiwan. Her 4-year-old son sometimes says, "Can you talk normally?" when I speak English to him, which is hilarious. That's very funny.
That's so true. Children are like that. They just think, you know, they have in their head, they've got the scheme of things, and what this isn't normal. So it's kind of like, why is mummy speaking that funny way? It's them being very tuned into their environment. And so,
absolutely. We've got some more countries joining us. We've got Latvia, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Turkey. And then we've got this comment from Judith Keys. Thanks so much for your answers. I'm just telling my son how smart he is because he's picking the shorter word. Very funny. That's very funny. Yeah, so I mean, I think children, like I said before, they're amazing. They sometimes, I mean, we've heard so many wonderful stories on the MOOC where children, you know, they're being exposed sometimes to a language of that, one of the languages of their parents, but the parents have never heard them speak it, and then suddenly the first time they meet their grandparents when they go to visit them, they can suddenly, you know, start conversing in it. So it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, no, the same thing can happen when they're learning English in a formal sort of, or in a classroom situation, and they go home and their parents might say, well, speak some English, and they won't speak English, and they worry and tell the teacher, oh, you know, my child's been in English class for 6 months and they're not speaking any English. And it's like that perhaps they are in English class, they just don't associate that they need to do that when they come home because it doesn't have any meaning. But, you know, when they know in class, oh, I have to speak to the teacher in English because then we won't get to do these fun activities. So, yeah, no, they're absolutely amazing. We need to trust them more that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, we've got one more comment from Dale, and then we'll have to start thinking about wrapping up. It's interesting watching my son make his language choices. He mainly chooses English, but switches to Japanese at different times and situations. Okay, so it's been really great being here with you all, and we're really looking forward to seeing you and reading your comments on the MOOC. And if you're not on the English in Early Childhood MOOC, then please do sign up, and we'd love to see you there. And we hope that you found all our discussions interesting today. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.